Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chaotic Little Book Corner. My name's Acacia. Today I'm going to be talking about this book, Fat is a Feminist Issue. And I'm going to put it here because I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of things that have kind of come up in my brain since reading this book. I read this book for the Book Buddy-a-thon. It was my free game, pick. I started it because I was excited about it, and I was curious about all of the things that it would talk about. This book had me crying within the first 20 pages. I felt a lot of guilt. I felt a lot of shame. I felt a lot of self-awareness and a lot of aha. After the first 20 pages. So I was ready for an amazing experience of this book that would just blow my socks off. And this book, I thought, was going to be all about expressing how fat is a feminist issue that we need to address as feminists. But what it ended up feeling like to me was a very dated exploration of obesity prior to more information coming forward. This book was written in the late 70s, and so there is a very clear bias of feeling that women coming into the workforce are still expected to have a family. There is a very clear conversation of women not being as high up in the workforce as men, and that being an issue, but still being the case. And there is a very clear miscommunication from this time period, so in the 70s, to now, as far as what overeating looks like and what overeating, the experience of overeating, and what it means psychologically. So, I admit in front of all of you right now that I suffer from overeating. I do not think of it as, and it is my eating disorder, one of my eating disorders. Now, overeating may just sound like an easy way to say I'm fat and I don't know how to control myself. But there's so much more complexity to the statement of I am an overeater. I don't do it because it's fun. I don't do it because I have no self-control. In fact, I know I can stop and I know I should stop, but my body physically can't. There is this really, really bad experience that I have where I will overeat, and then in order to compensate for the overeating, I will skip a meal or two, and I will eat in the middle of the night in order to console myself out of fear or loneliness or depression. I will also eat in the middle of the night just because I have an urge to binge, and I could be 100% full and not need to eat at all, and there's just this urge, overwhelming urge that comes over to binge, and it does happen. It's gotten better over the years, and as I've started to address the issue, I no longer have the same ability to binge at night as I used to, which is good. I've closed a lot of those loops off, but I still struggle with it. Now, when I started struggling with my obesity and my overweightness and my fat was really when I was younger, and I can identify an event that triggered the shift in healthy eating. It does not excuse the unhealthy eating, but it explains it. And I am not looking for anyone to tell me that I am doing this to myself, because I am aware that I've made choices, but at the same time, those choices are, in a sense, just like addiction. No, not in a sense. They are addiction. And the addiction is a part of the brain that is triggered by a substance, in my case, food. And really, there is no way for me to cure my addiction because I can't just stop eating. So I have to address the behavior. Now, what behaviors do I need to address are personal and scary to talk about, and I may talk about them in a future video, but at this point, I feel very, very tentative to discuss them. I know that a lot of the people that troll on my videos, their favorite insult is to call me fat, which, regardless of what I know in my heart, still makes it very difficult for me to discuss this kind of thing on a platform. This book really does not address the format of addiction, because at this point in time in history, overeating was not viewed as an addiction. It was viewed as an illness, which it is, but in a different way. It was viewed as you were overeating in order to prove your value and worth, and you were fat because you wanted the patriarchy to see you and take you seriously as a woman because you believed that those who are skinny are not taken as seriously. That was one of the premises and one of the ideas behind this book. And while I can understand that logic, and I can respect that that might have been the thought process of some women, I believe that there's so much more complication to it. And I think that there is so much more detail and so many more X factors that go into a woman or a man having overeating tendencies. This book was really, really eye-opening for me, and it really gave me a lot to think about. I did rate it 4 point stars. I think if there was a 0.5 system, it would be a 3.5. I saw so many problems with this book in how there is some fat shaming and some blaming, victim blaming. But it's not done out of hatred. It's done out of lack of information. And I think that there is lack of information that they had during the 70s that we have now that would probably have changed anyone's perspective on overeating. I found this book enlightening, informative, depressing, exhausting, and a piece of literature that anyone who is curious about the idea of overeating and has their own fears and belief system wrapped up in it should read. I'm not saying it's one you should go out and buy, but it is one that gives some information that you may not have. It gives some background to where the conversation of overeating and what that looks like started. It overall has a lot of important information and a lot of important ideas that were not fully formed at the beginning of this book and its experience out in the public. My copy has an introduction, which the introduction is really the part of this book that drew me in and gave me hope and gave me an idea of what this book was trying to do in the 70s but wasn't able to do because there wasn't enough information. So I can see how much we needed to learn in order for this book to give all the correct information, and we hadn't learned it yet. So overall, I think that this book is worth a read. It's interesting. It's a good conversation starter, and it gives a lot of food for thought, especially for those of us who do overeat. But definitely be aware that it's not something to read on a day when you're feeling overweight or when you're feeling bad about yourself. It is something to read on a day when you feel it's something to read on a day where you feel more at peace with yourself and centered and developed and more comfortable within your own skin. So those are my thoughts. Those are my ideas. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I look forward to hearing some comments in the comment section talking about this. Be respectful and be kind. I know I'm not the only overweight girl on my channel as far as subscribers and people in the community, and as such, I'm not trying to take on all their voices either, but I am letting you know that fat shaming will not be acceptable and causing victim blaming will not be acceptable. So please keep your cruel and judgmental comments on our weight to yourself. But if you have some concrete information or opinions that you believe should be heard and valid, you are more than welcome to address them down below in the comments. And I will talk to you in my next video.